conversation with James Talarico. James is running for Senate seat in Texas. He's running as a Democrat. And he's a person who speaks about faith in ways that a lot of us are motivated by. We think it's a great way to include faith voters in someone's own faith tradition without leaning into Christian nationalism. We talk about that a bunch in the interview. We invited faith leaders from across Texas and the United States to join in on this call. There's 10 questioners who ask questions of James Talarico, and it's co-hosted by Shannon Fleck from Faithful America and me, Doug Paget, Vote Common Good. And the event was also co-sponsored by a group called Pastors for Texas Children. So we're really excited about this conversation. We think you'll get a lot out of it. We did it just with faith leaders, hundreds of them together, and now we're going to share this with you. It's an hour and 10 minutes. I think you'll benefit greatly from it. Please share it widely, share it with other people who think that these conversations matter as well. So here's our conversation that we just finished up just minutes ago with State Representative and Senate candidate from Texas, James Talarico. Well, hello all. We're so glad to have you here at this conversation. I'm Doug Paget from Vote Common Good, and we're proud to host this meeting with James Talarico, who's running for Senate in Texas. And we want to talk about the role of faith in politics, the role of faith in America, and how we function. So it makes it a perfect hosting partner to have Shannon Fleck from Faithful America here with us. Shannon, good to have you with us. And we're also so proud to have Pastors for Texas Children helping to support this event. So thank you to all of you for being here. We have a number of people that are going to give comments and questions to the representative. But Shannon, thanks for being a co-host.
Oh my gosh. Well, thanks for asking, first of all, and thrilled to be here from Faithful America. We are a nationwide organization of progressive Christians that are especially passionate about pushing back against Christian nationalism, specifically white Christian nationalism here in the United States. We are seeing that flourish, and we are here as a voice to be prophetic in this moment. So thrilled to be here.
Representative Talarico, you've become famous for in a lot of people's minds and such an encouragement to a lot of people because you speak about faith in a way as a Democrat running for office that frankly feels unusual to people in a really great way. I don't know if that's how you want to start, but I want to just acknowledge that in this very difficult time where religion has felt like it's become a dividing point of political policy and political party and political identity, to have people who are willing to say that one political party is not in charge of religion, that Christianity is not a solely owned subsidiary of the Republican Party, and that faith in America should serve people and not be something that's used as a dividing point for us. So thank you for your work and thank you for being here. And anything you want to say before we get into conversation with our conversation partners?
Well, thank you all for having me. It's a real honor. I'm such a fan of the work that y'all do. I know we have so many incredible leaders on this call, so many wonderful organizations. And so I just want to tell you how humbled I am to be here with all of you. And you're right, it may seem a little unusual in the Democratic Party now, but it wasn't that unusual, years ago when we had labor organizers and civil rights organizers, farm workers who rooted their activism and their leadership in faith. And I've honestly been inspired by people like Reverend Raphael Warnock, who has shown us how to bring these two spheres into relationship. And for those of us who are Christian on this call, these are the two commandments that we were given: to love God and to love neighbor. And Jesus could have told us to love our immediate family members, could have told us to love our close friends. That would have been an easier commandment to follow. But he told us to love our neighbors, and that's inherently a public thing. And so that commandment that I was taught at a very early age by my granddad, who was a Baptist preacher in South Texas, that commandment is what motivates my public service. First as a public school teacher on the west side of San Antonio, and now as a public official. And so my faith is central to my work. And I'm trying to balance the world of faith and the world of politics. They are inextricably linked. Our faith has to move us from the sanctuary to the streets. But we do have to be cognizant of how these two two parts of our lives can be mixed in unhealthy ways. I know Reverend Fleck just mentioned Christian nationalism. I've been the chief opponent of Christian nationalism in the Texas legislature. I believe the separation of church and state is a sacred boundary that doesn't just protect the state, but also protects the church. Because as y'all already mentioned, when religion gets too cozy with political power, we lose our prophetic voice, our ability to speak truth to power, and be able to imagine a completely different world. And so I'm walking this tightrope. It's not always easy, but I'm trying to model a healthy relationship between faith and politics. And I hope in the Senate campaign we can model that relationship, not just for the whole state, but for the whole country. So really excited to be here in conversation with all of you, and looking forward to the dialogue.
You know, there's a lot of ways where this conversation about the role of faith in politics is about as American as you can get when you consider the First Amendment had to raise this question, right? Will the government pick a religion and support it? Would it establish an official religion? So from the very founding of this country and in all the colony experience before, we've been struggling with this. So I know a lot of people feel like it's just settled and we're done with it and we should move on, you know, the First Amendment, but we struggle with what the meaning of every one of our constitutional rights are and how do we apply those. And it's really, I think, just a very American thing to have to be thinking about the role of faith in politics and how we do it, and where one begins and one ends. And it's a live question for a lot of people. And frankly, it's gone ways in this country recently that are very scary to a lot of us as faith leaders, and I know even more terrifying to people who don't align with a faith at all.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's very important to make note of the fact that the ways in which faith and politics have come together have been in vastly unhealthy ways. A lot of that potentially has to do with some fear from the other side of engaging the topic. And Representative, you have engaged this topic without fear. So I'd love to kick it off just by asking, you've said before that theocracy is the most dangerous form of government. Could not agree more. Can you explain the distinction you see between your faith informing your leadership and the weaponizing of Christianity that we've seen from some of our other leaders?
Yeah, so you're right. I've said that theocracy is the most dangerous form of government, and I've explained that's because the only thing worse than a tyrant is a tyrant who thinks they're on a mission from God. And so my faith in Jesus leads me to reject Christian nationalism and leads me to recommit myself to the project, the unfinished project of a multiracial, multicultural democracy where we can all freely love God if that's what we choose to do, and where we can fully love our neighbors, all of our neighbors. America is not a Christian nation. It is a nation where you are free to be a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or a Hindu or a Sikh or a Buddhist or an agnostic or an atheist. And, you know, I'll just speak, I know we have folks from different traditions on the call, but for those of us who are Christian on the call, you know, we, I think, have a special responsibility here, not just because our religion is the dominant religion in this country, but because Jesus was deeply suspicious of religious supremacy. And oftentimes in some of his most famous parables, he lifts up members from another religion as examples of neighbor love. And so we've got to remember that neighbor love has to transcend these religious boundaries. And we should be wary of religious hierarchies. And sometimes, you know, sectarian religion gets in the way of loving our neighbor and of loving God. And so that's why we have to be on guard of any attempt to elevate our faith tradition over all the others. We have to be suspicious of any attempts to dominate our neighbors instead of loving them as ourselves. And honestly, when I read the words of the Declaration, when I read the words of our Constitution, I see the radical teachings of Jesus in those founding documents. The idea that all people are created equal, that they have inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is, to me, not only the most American um, form of government, but it is also a Christian form of government. I've said democracy, pluralistic democracy, is a Christian value, and we Christians should feel a special obligation to defend this kind of multicultural, multiracial, pluralistic democracy that we're trying to forge here in the United States. Again, it's an unfinished project. We have never lived up to the promise of this country, but if we come together, if we stay faithful, I think we can realize that dream, and we can build a country where we can all belong, and where we can all enjoy the blessings of liberty.
Well, thanks so much for being in this conversation with us. We have a number of faith leaders that we have questions for you. We have a list of those we're going to go through, and then we're going to open it up if we have time for other people who are on the call. And hey, look, thanks to all of you faith leaders who've joined this call. It really means a lot to us, and these are difficult times for a lot of faith leaders and a lot of people in this country. And any chance we have to be together and talk about things that we have full of hope and goodness are really great. So. James, your first conversation partner is going to be Reverend Michael Waters. He's the pastor at Abundant Life AME Church in Dallas. You might already know Michael Waters, but we're glad to have you on with him.
Wonderful.
Yes, thank you for joining and being a part of this conversation. You've already begun the beginnings of answering the question I wanted to pose to you, but maybe we can go a little bit deeper. What do you consider to be the greatest misconception regarding the role of faith in democracy, particularly as it relates to this ideal of the separation of church and state?
I think it's when we confuse the separation of church and state with a separation of faith and politics. And to me, that's a huge mistake. We have to have an institutional, legal separation between the government and the institutions of faith. But we all bring our moralities, our philosophies, our worldviews to our politics. And to me, faith is no different. Our faith should inform our politics, like it did for Jimmy Carter, for Dr. King, for Dorothy Day, for Cesar Chavez. Our faith should motivate us. So I would say that Christian activism is not Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism is an attempt to elevate our faith tradition over all the rest. It's an attempt to dominate our neighbors instead of loving them as ourselves. I believe, and again, this is my opinion as one believer in the body of Christ, I believe that the teachings of Jesus should lead us away from theocracy and toward democracy. I think if, again, no party has a monopoly on faith. I think if Jesus were here, he would not endorse the Democratic or Republican Party platforms. I think he would challenge America to continue working toward a radical vision of democracy. More rights, more freedoms, more opportunities for more of our neighbors. That is the challenge before us. And so I think that democracy is a Christian value. And we need, if this American experiment is going to continue, if it's going to survive, if it's hopefully going to grow for more of our neighbors, then that requires a Christian commitment to democracy. And we don't see that currently in this country. We saw our fellow Christians on January 6th holding crosses as they stormed the U.S. Capitol and tried to overturn a free and fair election. We have seen religion weaponized by the people in power to hurt our neighbors, particularly our marginalized neighbors. And so we are far from that vision of democracy, and we are far from a Christian commitment to that vision of democracy. It's on all of us as believers, as people of faith, to speak out against this perversion of our religion and this subversion of our democracy. And before Reverend Waters goes, just wanted to thank you, sir, for your leadership. Reverend Waters has been a beacon of light for those of us here in Texas. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I should not be in charge of the spotlighting because I'm already messing this up. So shout out to whoever wants to take that out of my hands.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to Reverend Waters for your question and engagement. I would love to introduce America Garcia Gruel. She is with the Frontera Foundation in Eagle Pass and call you up to ask a question.
Yes, thank you. I'm very glad to be calling in today. I'm in Eagle Pass, Texas, so we're in the location where the first border buoys went in, and we're also the location that had the highest number of recorded deaths along the entire United States border. I'm talking about San Diego to Brownsville, not just the state of Texas. And to this date, we are still trying to find the identities of some of the people who perished here in Eagle Pass. On the bottom of my screen, you can see our annual cross memorial that we erect to remember those who died in search of their dreams. I was raised here in Eagle Pass with the philosophy that love is a verb and that faith without actions is dead. And I've been criticized and told that my compassionate view on immigration reform is lacking the details, the nitty gritty that we need to have to enforce security. I hear operational security, I hear control. Sir, your past focus has been on humanity rather than on hardening infrastructure. And I believe that you're going to get the same kind of criticisms that I've gotten living here on the border when you come and you try and solicit votes across the entire state of Texas. So my question for you is this: how do you take your ideals and match it to the complex ground level life and death reality of border economics and cross-border life?
Well, first, thank you, America, for your work. You and your organization have been an inspiration to me, an inspiration to a lot of Texans in a very dark time. And you are fighting for our neighbors, both here in the United States, our neighbors across the border, and we all should live up to your example. And this is an issue I care a lot about. This is a community I care a lot about. My family's from the border. My mom grew up in Laredo, Texas, not too far from Eagle Pass. And so this is the border is such a beautiful part of our state, and it's misunderstood by a lot of people across this country. And so the way I think about this is that we can both welcome the stranger, which we should all remember is maybe the most common commandment in our tradition, both the Christian tradition, but also the Jewish tradition. We are called to welcome the stranger because we were once strangers, as the Hebrew Bible says. And you wouldn't be talking to a guy with the last name Talarico if this was not a nation of immigrants. We all have that immigrant story in our backgrounds, in our families. We all recognize that immigrants make us stronger, they make us richer, they make this country what it is. That is critical that we have an immigration system that reflects our values and that protects human rights. I also don't think that is mutually exclusive with public safety. I believe that public safety is the most important thing that the government does. And that's saying something, because as a former public school teacher, I would put public education and public health pretty high up on that list. But safety, ensuring that everyone is safe, is part of that work for human rights. And so I think that if we can get past the grandstanding, if we can stop playing politics with this issue, we can build an immigration system that honors our legacy as a nation of immigrants, that welcomes the stranger, and also keeps us safe. Not just native-born Americans, but also migrants and immigrants. You just mentioned how deeply unsafe this current system is, and the extremism that we've seen on the border is, the number of people who have died, the number of parents and children who have died. We've seen with this current extremist policy when it comes to ICE, how dangerous that has been, both for undocumented neighbors and also for native-born Americans. And so what I want to do is finally pass comprehensive immigration reform. The metaphor that I've used is that our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front and a lock on the door. You can do both of those things at the same time. You often hear that people need to come here the right way. Those of us who understand this issue know that there is no longer a right way to come here. And so we've got to build way more legal pathways for folks who want to come here and live the American dream, who want to escape violence abroad, and who want to find opportunity and safety here in the United States. We need to reform our asylum system. We got to hire way more immigration judges. We can do all of that while keeping out folks who do mean to do us harm. I'm a big believer that we should be cracking down on the cartels, not our communities. We should be deporting gang members, not small business owners. We should be hunting down human traffickers, not moms and babies. So I am for actual public safety. And if there's a a migrant or an immigrant who wants to come here and live the American dream, contribute to our economy, contribute to our communities, that is something we should welcome. That is something that we should make easier for those migrants or those immigrants. And if there are people who are doing harm, who are hurting people in our communities, then that needs to be dealt with immediately and swiftly. So I'm holding both of these things together because I don't think they're contradictory. And I think most Texans, most Americans are actually in that same spot where they want to welcome immigrants and keep us all safe. We can do both.
I thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
James, thank you for that. Proud to introduce to you our next conversation partner, and that's Pastor Chris C. Chris pastors the Ecclesia community in Houston, Texas, and used to be down in Waco, at a great little place where I'm sure you've spent a little bit of time.
I was just in Waco this morning. So,
Proud to introduce you to Chris C.
Thank you, James. We appreciate you being with us today. I know many in our community have drawn a great deal of comfort about through the ways that you've talked about faith, the ways that you've engaged, sometimes an opposition that's been difficult to communicate with, right? But I think of times in our state Senate where you've forced them to look at things they've created around legislation around furries, or using our trans brothers and sisters, and using bathrooms to be a wedge issue. I think we've just come through a week, and as pastors, we've been trying to guide people that are struggling after what they've seen in Minneapolis. We're hurting, we're a bit confused, and we're watching one side watch the same thing and say that they see something that none of the rest of us seem to see. As we walk this path in a world that's become really divided, and I think part of what I'm saying is we're grateful in almost a Fred Rogers-like way. You've chosen to speak kindly to people when you say hard things, and at times it seems to resonate. The world seems to be getting more divided, and how do we continue to do that? And what does it look like, given the separation of church and state, and the reality that Christian nationalism is not this desire to dominate our neighbor is not the mission, but our local churches are partners. Our church runs a Head Start program that serves largely immigrants here in Houston. We're working on affordable housing projects that we need to work with the government. What does it look like in this environment to work with churches in a polarized time?
Yeah, such a great question, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Maybe the most difficult commandment to follow in our Christian tradition is to love our enemies. I think it's an interesting teaching because, one, Jesus is acknowledging that we were going to have enemies. If you're confronting entrenched power, if you're speaking truth to that power, if you're standing up for your vulnerable neighbors, you're going to run into opposition. You're going to have opponents. You're going to have enemies, sometimes very powerful enemies. But at the same time, we are called to love and to humanize those opponents. And so this is a really difficult line to walk. It's one that I struggle to walk every day in the Texas legislature. I'm human like the rest of us. And so when I see these morally reprehensible bills that are being proposed in the Texas House, I feel anger and I feel tempted by hate. But I remind myself that my job is to chart a different path. It is to stand up for my neighbors. It is to look bullies in the eye. But I have to be careful not to become a bully myself. And that is a danger we all face doing this work. And so when I'm in the legislature, when I'm going toe to toe with my Republican colleagues, I always try, I don't always succeed, but I always try to never dehumanize my opponents in a debate. I always try to have a baseline of respect. Again, I debate very fiercely, as you've seen before, and I don't put up with nonsense. But I do try to treat my opponents, my enemies, with respect and with a deep love. My pastor growing up used to say that sometimes, just like when you're out having a drink with your friends and your friend grabs their car keys to go drive home after they've had one too many drinks, your job as the friend, as someone who loves that person, is to grab those car keys. And that may feel aggressive. It may feel confrontational, but it is done out of love for them. It is done out of love for the people they may hurt if they drive away from that interaction. And so to me, that's what we're called to do in this moment. We have to be aggressive. We have to be confrontational. We have to stand up to bullies and protect our neighbors. But we've got to do that while maintaining that love for them. Because as Dr. King said, we're trying to win a double victory for us and for them. The goal is for all of us to live in fellowship one day, for all of us in that kingdom of heaven to be in communion with one another. And so we want to maintain that possibility. We want to try to nourish that dream of that future. And so that has to be at the back of our mind in every fight, in every interaction, in every debate, in every resistance, in every protest. And that's what I've tried to do. And I think that's the secret to saving this American experiment and to saving democracy all over the world. We have to learn how to love our enemies. How do we love each other through these disagreements? How do we love each other through these conflicts? I think that holds the key to saving this project.
Amen.
James, would you like to say anything about the connection to churches and what the relationship would be for the government?
Yes, great. Yes, sorry. Yes, I'm a big fan of any time that we can partner with churches and faith communities in doing this work. I think that's incredibly valuable, as long as it's done inclusively, as long as we aren't privileging any one tradition, any one faith community. I think it's so important that we foster and strengthen these faith communities in the work that they're doing. And sometimes they're doing it more effectively and more efficiently than the public sector can do it. And so I think we should welcome those kinds of partnerships as long as they meet constitutional muster and as long as we aren't elevating any one faith community over the others.
Yeah, amen to that. The inclusivity is Christianity. They are the same. The love your neighbor no matter what mentality is what we're going for. And the loving your enemy piece is, as you said, the most challenging. So appreciate you uplifting that. I want to call up Rabbi Andrew Paley, who will be asking our next question.
Great, thank you so much. Representative, thank you for being with us today. We're very excited for this conversation. Look forward to many others that we hope to have. So this past week, the Jewish community, in our reading of our sacred scripture, reads in part the story of Moses at the burning bush. And the Bible has this great line where Moses looks upon this bush that was burning, but it wasn't consumed. And it was the same time frame that we learned about the synagogue in Mississippi that was burned, but it wasn't consumed. And it just sort of reinforced a moment in our collective thinking that many communities, including the Jewish community, but so many others, are experiencing rising fears as anti-Semitism, political violence, reprisals become not just a one-off thing, but a normalized experience seemingly every day. That's unfortunately what it feels like. So there you are in the U.S. Senate, in your office, and I'm just curious, in that moment that you have there, what concrete steps would you prioritize to confront this rising anti-Semitism, political violence, and so on, without treating it as an exception? And most importantly, to ensure that all marginalized communities are protected without pitting one's group safety against another's.
Yeah, such an important question. Thank you, Rabbi, for asking it. I really don't think you should believe anything a politician says. I think you should look at what a politician has done. And throughout my 7 years in the Texas legislature, I have confronted and combated anti-Semitism at every turn. I've stood with our Jewish community here in Central Texas, our local rabbis. I've worshiped alongside our Jewish neighbors in our local synagogues, and have called out this rising tide of anti-Semitism here and around the world. And what happened in Mississippi comes on the heels of what happened at Bondi Beach in Australia on the first night of Hanukkah. I went on national television that evening and spoke to the country about how we all need to come together and stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters and combat hate in all its forms, but particularly anti-Semitism. And so this is something that we're going to have to continue to confront. And it is incumbent upon us as Christians, I think in particular, those of us on this call, given our dominance in this country, to always speak out when it comes to anti-Semitism. We should have deep reverence and respect for our mother tradition. Y'all know that I'm a seminary student at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. And one of the blessings that I received at that seminary was studying the Hebrew Bible along with one of our local rabbis from Rabbi Blumoff in Austin. And, too often we Christians learn about the Hebrew scriptures through a Christian lens. And it is so refreshing to hear it directly from one of our local rabbis and to understand the beauty of the tradition, of the teachings, and how our faith is rooted in those teachings. I think can help foster more interfaith dialogue and interfaith cooperation, and hopefully that can be a model for the rest of the world. Because if we can't figure out how to live together in love and peace and brotherhood in the United States, I worry about how the rest of the world will be able to achieve that kind of interfaith community. So I think we've got a lot of work to do, as recent events have shown us. But I'm confident that love will win at the end of the day, despite any of the current evidence. And I think that's something that certainly political leaders have a responsibility to try to achieve.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Representative, for those great comments. Verola Law is going to be our next conversation partner with you, and she's going to stay off camera, not feeling so well today, and all of us fuss as we do about how we look on a camera in these meetings, so we can sort of imagine that. So let me get her spotlighted here.
I did figure out a pin, Doug, just so you know.
Okay. Okay.
That's all I got.
Well, have at it. Dr. Law, can you start talking? We'll see if we can hear you.
Hello, I'm Brazola Law, and I am the senior minister at Northway Christian Church near the Park Cities, but we are annexed in Dallas. And so the church is 120 years old, and they've never had a pastor this beautiful or this one who's been kissed by the sun this long. And as such, I get to see the intersections. Today, we had 90 families, 17 new families who came through our mobile food pantry, and we get complaints often because we are a rich church in land and feel called to serve those who others don't serve, to the extent that we've had to be creative with our resources because persons are afraid to come get food even though their children need food because of their fear of ICE. So my question comes at the intersections. How do you ensure that the voices and experience of those most impacted by injustice shape not only your policies, but your decision-making process itself?
Well, it's such a great question. It's something I think about a lot. There's no way that one person can truly represent a state as big and diverse as Texas. 30 million people, so many different communities, people from so many different backgrounds, beliefs. And so it is incumbent upon me as a leader to have a team around me that looks like Texas. And I'm proud to say on this campaign that our senior staff, the leaders that are making decisions about where we invest time and resources, that team is majority minority and is majority women. And that is, again, to compensate for my own blind spots, my own prejudices, my own biases. I'm trying to be very intentional about ensuring that our decision-making team, our leadership team, reflects the diversity of our state, and that we've got folks who understand and have lived experiences confronting this kind of injustice. And I just want to say on this particular issue of ICE and the extremism we're seeing when it comes to mass deportations, it weighs heavily on me Again, as a former teacher from the west side of San Antonio, I taught a lot of undocumented students. Those students were children of promise who are now being terrorized by their own government. And I've said before that once we win this Senate majority, we must launch a full investigation into ICE, top to bottom. We have to haul these masked men before Congress so the world can see their faces. We have to ban ICE agents from wearing masks, from kidnapping people off our streets without a warrant. We have to require them to identify themselves like any law enforcement official. And we have to end this policy of mass deportations that, again, is terrorizing our communities across Texas and across this country. And, obviously the murder of Renee Good in Minnesota just days ago should alarm all of us. Again, a United States citizen killed by her own government in broad daylight in what should be the greatest democracy in the world. I'm going to let my libertarian streak show, but I really do believe that in the United States, we as people shouldn't be afraid of our government. Our government should be afraid of us. That is how a democracy should work. That is how a government of, by, and for the people should work. And so this secret police force, this practice of disappearing people off our streets is fundamentally un-American and undemocratic, and it has to end. So I am very passionate about this issue, and it's why I'm running so hard in this race so that we can end this policy and we can hold ICE accountable.
Thank you so much. I think the immigration conversation is so critical in this moment, not just from a political perspective, but what do we as people of faith, what are we willing to tolerate before we stand up and hold the moral line? And stepping into that place as faith leaders is really important to call upon bravery in this moment. Very, very appreciative to Reverend Law, who is ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. So I just have to say hi and holler. The next speaker is the pastor of a congregation that I am a huge fan of, Galileo Church in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm thrilled to bring up Reverend Katie Hayes. Reverend.
Thank you. Disciple, another capital D disciple in the house. Hello. Representative Talarico, thank you so much for being with us. These last couple of legislative sessions in Texas have been a slog, brother, and I'm grateful for your service just to stay the course throughout. I read with great pleasure the transcript of your interview with Ezra Klein in the Times this morning. I want to say that the way you articulate your faith and then how your faith spurs you to action in the public square, it resonates deeply with me, and I am grateful for your articulation in that. That said, I have to tell you that I'm worried lately about my own tendency, and I truly am talking about myself here, to gnash my teeth when public leaders are using Christian language to justify policies that I deplore. I rage. My friend says I do a little dance of impotent rage in my kitchen. It's very cute. And then to turn around and celebrate when public leaders use Christian language to justify policies that I agree with. And lately, I've just been imagining Jesus just rolling his eyes and wondering if maybe we could just leave him out of it. Maybe we could just work it out and not drag him into it. And so I'm asking whether you've got the same worry that refuting one kind of Christian talk on the right with another kind of Christian talk on the left is what we should be hoping for, aiming for. Or shouldn't we be practicing maybe a kind of code switching, so that we employ radically Christian reasoning in our intra-church conversations? That's absolutely how I should be talking with my congregation in Bible study or prayer meetings or in Sunday sermons. But then that we should find a non-sectarian, universally available reasoning that we can then use in the public square. And my questioning of this in my own heart and my own practice is informed lately by reading a book called Baptizing America the subtitle of which just sends chills up my spine: How Mainline Protestants Helped Build Christian Nationalism. It's by our colleagues Brian Kaler and Bo Underwood, and they argue there that if it's an abuse of Christian privilege in a majority Christian nation when they do it on the right, isn't it also an abuse of Christian privilege if we do it on the left? I'm sincerely asking.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's something I've asked myself many times, something I struggle with. A few thoughts. One is I've said from the very beginning of this campaign that I no longer see politics as left versus right. I see it as top versus bottom. The other is that I worry about a false equivalence here, and I understand the impulse to check ourselves. But when I hear speeches of Adolf Hitler using Christian language to push his ideology, and I read the sermons of Dr. King or the political speeches of Dr. King, because he wasn't just isolated to the pulpit, he was a public figure in the public square, using the teachings of Jesus and Christian language to advocate for his positions. I do not see an equivalence. I think we have to check ourselves. As I've said before, Christianity is so much bigger than either political party. I agree with you. I don't think Jesus would be a partisan Republican or a partisan Democrat. Both parties are deeply flawed. Both are we can't fit the small things into the big thing, and I think there's so many attempts to try to fit Christianity into these small buckets of partisan politics. But the reason I say that politics is top versus bottom is because I think it's the conflict here is working people, whether they are more conservative or more progressive, whether they're black, white, brown, whether they're documented or undocumented. And it's all of us versus the very powerful forces at the top, the billionaires who own the algorithms, who own the cable news networks, who own the politicians. And it is their attempt to divide us and to profit off that division. That, to me, is the main fight in this country. I think faith can bring us together to take on those entrenched powers. And I think that is very true to our tradition. When you read the Gospels, Jesus certainly wasn't neutral. He certainly wasn't middle of the road. He took a stand. He took a stand against the wealthy and the powerful on behalf of the marginalized, on behalf of the oppressed. And in this country, I think if we're going to be Christ followers, we have to pick a side. And I choose to be on the side of those at the bottom against those at the top. And that's the kind of campaign I'm running. I last night was in Plano, Texas, as you know well, up in DFW. This is a red county that President Trump carried by double digits in the last election. We had 2,000 people show up at our town hall. Many of them were not Democrats. Many of them were independents. And yes, many of them were Republicans or conservatives. And they felt like they could join this campaign because it wasn't partisan, because it was a unifying movement to take on entrenched power at the top. So that tends to be how I think about Christian populism, if you'll grant me that moniker. It is not a left or right fight, because that's the kind of division that those billionaires have fostered so they can profit off of it, right? They want MSNBC versus Fox News. They want blue team versus red team. They want us fighting like it's professional wrestling so that they can make money off of it, right? They get money off of the clicks, off of the eyeballs. And so they're laughing all the way to the bank as we are sitting here bickering over one party versus the other. And I'm trying to break us out of that mindset and trying to recognize that the real fight is bringing us all together to realize and fulfill our Christian values of a nation where we can all fulfill our God-given potential. And then the last thing I'll say is I have to be true to myself when I'm in the public square. And that means being honest of the tradition I come from. Yes, Christianity is a universal religion. It is inclusive of everyone. But it is a particular tradition, too, that is rooted in certain stories, in certain rituals, in certain teachings. And I want to be honest about where those roots come from. And I hope that we can build a politics where everyone can be honest. If you're coming from the Hindu tradition, the Jewish tradition, the Islamic tradition, if you're coming from a humanistic tradition or a philosophical or ethical tradition, that you should explain your why. the reason that I think we're in this mess and the reason we see Christian nationalism is because those of us who believe in democracy have ceded religion to the other side. We have allowed the only people speaking about faith to be the Republican Party. That's been, I mean, since Jimmy Carter, that has been the Democratic Party here in this country, where really there's only Republicans who speak explicitly about religion and morality and faith. And then we've gotten the reputation as a party as being a party that's hostile to religion, hostile to religious values. And so that's the tension that I'm running into and trying to correct. I'm trying not to claim Jesus for the Democratic Party. I'm trying to wrestle away Jesus from partisan politics.
Thank you.
That's a great couple of lines in there. I'm going to steal a few of those. Hey, we've been at it 45 minutes. Maybe you've got a glass of water nearby you and you're thinking, I don't know what the great time is to reach for that, but this might be a very fine time if you were so inclined and wanted to reach for a glass of water if you need one. Our next, don't want to stick you in that, awkward Marco Rubio moment that the guy had. Those of us that are nerds with that kind of thing. Our next conversation partner here is going to be Reverend Dr. Leonard Lee from the Brown Chapel AME in Houston. Reverend Lee, thanks for being with us.
Thank you all for this opportunity. Legislative State Senator, Talarico, let me first apologize. I do not have a history of you. I'm here in the Houston area and don't know all of your work that you've done with the faith community or your constituents in general. So my question, and you kind of answered or spoke to it in general, I think, but kind of like a Rabbi Paley, I'm asking for something a little bit concrete, if you will. And so my question is, while we are talking about connecting with the faith community in this forum, how will you, or how have you done that too? How have you done that in the past? How have you stayed connected to the pulse of the faith community? Now, let me just say that my benchmark for politicians being in connection with the faith community, at least here in the Houston area, and I'm a country preacher, just happen to be located in downtown Houston now, is that Sheila Jackson Lee. Sheila Jackson Lee had a great relationship with the folks in the Houston area, and you're looking at a statewide office. So what would be the mechanism or the strategy that you would utilize to stay connected to the faith community?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Reverend. And I'm a state representative in Central Texas, in the Austin area, and I'm running for statewide office for the very first time. Launched the campaign 4 months ago, and it's obviously a big state. And I'm trying to get to every part of the state and meet as many people as I can. But I am probably the most unknown candidate in this race in either party. I'm the new kid on the block, so it's incumbent upon me to introduce myself to as many communities, including as many faith communities as I can. I've been in different houses of worship every weekend since the campaign started, and I have many more to visit. I'm actually going to be at St. John's in Houston on Sunday, this upcoming Sunday, to meet the congregation and speak to the congregation. And would love for anybody on the call, if you're willing to have a politician come and visit your church, would love to come and visit with your congregants and hear about the needs in the community. But to be specific, we are in the process of hiring a faith liaison. So we're going to have a dedicated team member who is focused on building these relationships, on staying in contact with faith leaders and faith communities all over the state. That's exactly the work I would continue if I were to win this U.S. Senate seat and be the U.S. Senator for Texas. I would want to stay in close contact with faith leaders across the state, just like I have with faith leaders in my district in Central Texas as a state lawmaker. And because I do think that this is how you truly represent a state as big and diverse as Texas. So it's a work in progress, and it is something that I care a lot about. Again, as a seminarian, as someone who's studying to become a minister myself, someone whose faith is central in my life. This work of building interfaith partnerships and dialogue across the state is very personal and important to me.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Dr. Lee for your question. I'm excited to introduce Pastor Charles Johnson, who's with Pastors for Texas Children. This is a sensational organization. I was lucky enough to be a part of the founding here in Oklahoma of Pastors for Oklahoma Kids. Sensational mission. Pastor Johnson, thank you for being a sponsor and a co-host today and for all the work you're doing with your organization. Welcome your question.
Thank you, Reverend Shannon. James, good to see you. Appreciate all your work in the legislature. I've seen that transcendent patience that you've had toward those knuckleheads on the Public Education Committee. Doug, thank you for including us. There are a number of pastors for children on this call. I'm proud to see a lot of my colleagues, and thank you for being a pastor for children. James, we fought the fight against privatization of public education. You've been at the forefront of that. We've been at the forefront of that. Why is public education important?
Well, as I've already mentioned,
why is the present political class trying to destroy it, Washington and Austin? And what should the church do? Why should faith communities preserve public education? Go ahead. Thank you, my friend.
Well, first, thank you, Pastor, for your work. And it was an honor and a privilege to work alongside you in the trenches of the Texas legislature against private school vouchers. And as you all know, and as we've already discussed on this call, I was a teacher before I ever ran for office. It's where my public service started on the west side of San Antonio. And the reason I ran for office was because I saw how decisions made in the halls of power hurt kids like mine on the west side, kids just like them all over the state of Texas. And I mentioned earlier in the conversation with the Reverend from Fort Worth that politics, in my view, is not left versus right, it's top versus bottom. This is an example of that dynamic. This private school voucher push was funded by some of the wealthiest mega donors in the country and here in Texas. Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks, the two billionaire mega donors from West Texas, who are both Christian nationalists. Betsy DeVos, a billionaire from Michigan, who's a Christian nationalist. Jeff Yass, a billionaire from Pennsylvania. These billionaires came together to privatize public education, to take money out of our underfunded public schools that serve working class, middle class kids, and give that money to wealthy parents who already have their kids in private school. It was a transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top, from working people to very wealthy people. And that's exactly the dynamic we're seeing across all these issues, whether it's healthcare, whether it's housing, or whether it's education. And so I think we as Christians, we as people of faith, have to be on the side of those at the bottom against those at the top who are trying to destroy our way of life and destroy the ladders to opportunity. And public education, as you know, Pastor, is the great equalizer. It is the way that kids like me who were born to a single mom who didn't get to go to college, it's how I was able to go to the University of Texas and Harvard University. Public education is the only reason I'm on this call right now as a candidate for the U.S. Senate. I bet a lot of us could say the same thing. Public education is how kids like me can live the American dream. We have a lot of work to do to improve public education. It is a flawed system that isn't serving everyone equally. There's way too many inequities, way too many inequalities, way too many injustices in our education system. But those aren't going to get better with a privatization scheme like this voucher scam that they've been pushing. It's only going to make those problems worse. So instead of giving our tax money to wealthy people who don't need it, to the billionaire mega donors who are corrupting our political system, let's put more money into our public schools. Let's make sure that our teachers are the best paid teachers in the nation. Let's ensure every single child can fulfill their God-given potential. That's the work that I'm doing. It's why I'm in this crazy world of politics. And I think it is also very Christ-like work for all of us to be engaged in. And I'm so thankful that you, Pastor, have brought together faith leaders to engage in this fight, because I think it's exactly what Jesus would want us to do.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for all of your good work. We have two scheduled conversation partners left. The next one is the pastor at Oaklawn UMC Church there in Dallas, and this is Rachel Allison Griffin.
Hi, thank you so much for being with us, Rachel Griffin Allison at Oaklawn. And I know that you come to this conversation both as a person of faith, a faith leader, and as an elected official. And when political rhetoric or policy dehumanizes entire communities, faith leaders sometimes take extraordinary steps to protect people from harm. Like we've seen with the diocese in San Bernardino lifting the obligation to attend Mass in response to immigration detentions and the threat there. We're also seeing visible expressions of inclusive faith, like churches publicly affirming LGBTQ plus people, increasingly pressured toward erasure. As someone who holds both this spiritual conviction and public office, how do you understand your responsibility when faith leaders are signaling that state power and the federal government are causing this kind of fear and trauma? And what does it call you to do as a public servant? And then I just want to tag on to that. For faith leaders listening across Texas, many of whom are discerning how publicly to witness in this moment, what kind of encouragement or guidance would you offer about the role that faith can play in a healthy pluralistic democracy?
Such an important question. America needs all of us right now. This American experiment in self-governance, in democracy, needs all of us right now to step up and to act with courage. And we've all got to figure out what that looks like for us. For me, it's running for US Senate, which is a pretty scary thing to do on a whole host of levels. But I feel a deep sense of urgency that I have to do everything in my power to meet this historic moment in our country and stand up for our neighbors, not just here in Texas, but all over the country, and frankly, all over the world. And so this is how I'm choosing to step up and act with courage. But I think all of us, particularly our faith leaders, need to answer that question for themselves. And it's a question that should nag at us, because again, the only reason that we enjoy the privilege of living in this this imperfect democracy is because so many people fought and died for this project. And that's people who stormed beaches, it's people who braved fire hoses. That is the legacy that we inherit. And it is time for us to grab that torch and continue that journey. I saw an example of this in my home church of St. Andrew's Presbyterian in Austin, Texas, right outside Austin city limits. Our pastor, Dr. Jim Rigby, who I've known since I was 2 years old, he married my parents, he baptized me. He is still my pastor today. And he showed me what it means to act with courage from the pulpit. He, in the 1990s, made the decision to ordain gay and lesbian clergy to bless same-sex marriages. He risked his own ordination. He was put on trial by the National Presbyterian denomination for those actions. In the 2000s, Dr. Jim made the decision to allow an atheist to join our congregation, again, setting off a firestorm within the church. But he was taking example from Jesus's table ministries of bringing in unlikely neighbors together to be in relationship. And then in the 2010s, Dr. Jim and our church, St. Andrew's, made the decision to house an undocumented mother and son fleeing violence in Central America as they were facing deportation by the United States government. And we are still providing them sanctuary to this day. And so at great personal risk, at great professional risk, my pastor showed me that to live out the universal, radical love of Jesus Christ, it means acting with courage. It means being more concerned about our neighbors than being concerned about our careers, about our professional lives, and that's easier said than done. But I do believe that's what we're called to do as Christians, and as politicians who profess the Christian faith, we're also called to act with courage. I know this past summer, I led the quorum break with my House Democratic colleagues to protest the unlawful redistricting power grab being pushed by the President of the United States that would have diluted the voting power of Black and brown Texans all over our state. We left our beloved Texas. We went to Chicago to deny the Republican majority a quorum, and we faced bomb threats. We faced personal threats. I know I, as one of the more visible members of the quorum break, received many threats against me and my family. But again, this moment in our country's history requires courage. And this is bigger than all of us, and it's bigger than any one career. It's bigger than any one church. And so we all got to do what we have to serve this country and serve this democracy.
Amen to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Courage is the name of the game right now, especially for faith leaders, as we're stepping into very uncharted territory, at least for white clergy specifically. This is new territory, and we very much need to be calling upon one another as we find the strength to stand in that prophetic space right now. I would love to call our last question. And apparently he is a constituent of yours. So very pleased to introduce Father Jamie Matthias. He is with Holy Family Catholic Church in Austin. Father.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Shannon. Father Jamie Matthias, pastor of Holy Family Catholic Church here in Austin, a largely immigrant parish and Austin's only inclusive Catholic community. My husband and I built our new home in Northeast Austin in 2023. And so in 2024, I voted for the first time for James Talarico, and I could not say how I am just so absolutely proud. Every time I see you, Representative Talarico, here in the state of Texas and on national news, it just makes me so exceedingly proud that you are representing us here in this House district. Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
My question is this, for the background. So I served in public office here in Austin on the Austin School Board from 2012 to 2020, where we saw a shift in the conversation, especially in 2015, 2016. Since then, we've seen a steady erosion of civility and such values as love of neighbor. I've been absolutely appalled by the erosion of the gospel values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the very pro-life issues of support for public education, support for vaccinations, etc. I pray that we are not beyond the point of no return. But we as pastors are walking a difficult line, and that is that we as religious leaders are very sensitive to cult behavior and how it is that human beings are prone to follow other human beings, and as a result, to say and do some pretty despicable things. Many of us as pastors are thinking about how it is that we can best help family members, friends, congregants, whom others might suggest from a more objective perspective are a part of a cult. Cult, of course, coming from a Latin root meaning worship. And so my question for you, Representative Talarico, is whether you found any ways to pass in a very pastorally sensitive way to address what it is that's happening to our nation. For us as pastors, as we try to be pastorally sensitive to the millions of people who, from a religious perspective, might be said to be part of a cult and or who've been brainwashed by all sorts of crazy messaging. Any words of wisdom that you can share with us as pastors? And then my final question for those joining us on this Zoom call is not for you, Representative, but for them. How can we get James Talarico elected to the U.S. Senate? Representative Talarico.
Well, thank you, Father, for those kind words. I also want to say we were talking about courage. To all of our Catholic brothers and sisters on this call, your new Pope has shown the world what it means to act with courage and to live out the gospel. And I've been deeply inspired by Pope Leo. I didn't think a Pope could inspire me as much as Pope Francis did, but Pope Leo proved me wrong and has really been a source of comfort and inspiration and wisdom in these difficult times. Even as a non-Catholic, I have looked to Pope Leo for that spiritual leadership. So thankful to the Catholic Church for all it's done in this moment. And I know it's not just the Pope. I know we've seen Catholic leaders across our state, across the country, stepping up in this moment and confronting the powers that be. And so it's really an honor to be doing this work alongside all of you. I mentioned earlier that I think we can't just be focused on the personalities in our politics. We have to be focused on the system itself. And that is why our politics and our civic life is so broken. Think about who was at the front row at the inauguration. Think about who runs the 24-hour corporate media that treats news as entertainment. Think about who owns the social media algorithms that keep us angry and divided. A handful of billionaires have redesigned our politics for their own profit. Us versus them, trolling, owning, name calling, winning at all costs. It's professional wrestling. And we all keep watching, we all keep scrolling, we all keep fighting, and they keep getting richer off of it. And these billionaires have literally transformed the way we talk to each other, the way we learn about the world. It's the reason you and your MAGA uncle, who you used to get along with just fine, now live in completely different realities. Politics shouldn't feel this way. Politics, in my opinion, is just another word for how we treat our neighbors. And we should treat each other so much better than this. We can transform this broken political system. They may have the money, but we have the majority. And so we have to come together across all these manufactured divisions, party, race, gender, religion. We have to come together across all these divisions. We have to have a politics of union over a politics of division. That is how we transform the system. That is how we save this American experiment. That's how we learn to love our neighbors again as ourselves. I really think that's possible. It's why I'm stepping up to run for this seat, to try to chart this different kind of politics, this politics of union, this politics of love. And again, this is beyond partisanship. This is really about bringing people together across the partisan spectrum, because I think that partisan spectrum is false. I think it is an illusion. I think we all have way much more in common than we realize, than what those billionaires want us to realize. And again, after I just talked about loving my enemy, I also think this is best for those billionaires. I'm not trying to demonize them. I'm trying to humanize them. And hoarding that much wealth and power is bad for those billionaires. And so I think the vision I'm articulating of a true democracy where we all have freedom and opportunity, where we can all learn to live despite our differences and disagreements, I think that will be better for those billionaires too, not just all of us. So I'm trying to win a double victory for us and for them. And I think if we can break out of this corrupt, broken, divisive system, I think we can chart a new path in this country. And it's what I'm trying to do on this campaign. We cannot stay neutral. If there's one thing you can take away from all of this, it's that neutrality is not an option. For too long, Christians have stayed out of politics by saying that they're non-political or they are neutral. There's no such thing. If you are neutral, you are taking the side of the powerful. You are protecting the status quo. So we must be political as Christians, not partisan. Again, there's a difference between partisan and being political. But we as Christians, we as people of faith from all traditions, have a responsibility to take our faith from the sanctuary to the streets, to not just love God, but to also love neighbor. And that, I think, is what I'm trying to do. And I think we all need to find a way to do that in our own spheres of influence.
Thank you, Representative.
Yeah, thank you, Father, for being part of this. James, I know you've got a busy schedule. Every day is full minute by minute, and we know we've taken a couple of extra minutes of yours, and we really do appreciate it, and we know we have to let you go. Can I just ask you one thing? What would people be surprised to know about you that they don't already know when they watch you on Scroll or see you in running? I know you're a representative and all the rest, but like, what's the James Talarico thing that you think you want people to know?
Well, I think I feel like because I'm in this work, I'm always so serious. I'm always having to talk about very serious, weighty topics. And that's because a lot of these decisions are very serious and impact people's lives. But I think if you were to spend a day with me, you'd realize that I'm a lot more silly than the way I have to act in the public square or at the pulpit. So I like to joke around. I like to be lighthearted about life, and I like to tease people. So whenever y'all spend time with me, you'll realize that I'm not as serious as I appear on TV or on social media. And the last thing I just want to ask, if your congregation, if your house of worship, regardless of your tradition, if you want me to come visit, if you want me to hear from your congregants, if you want me to speak to your congregants, I would be honored to do so. And so please reach out to me, reach out to our team. Miriam Lake is our political director on this call. I think she put her contact information in the chat. Please reach out. We're trying to visit a different faith community every weekend, sometimes multiple faith communities in one weekend. Would love to add yours to the list. So please send those to me. And then, of course, can't leave the call without also asking for your prayers. This is not just a political struggle that we're all engaged in. It is a spiritual struggle. And I believe deeply in the power of prayer. So please keep me in your prayers. Keep this country in your prayers. And it's an honor to do this work alongside all of you.
Right on. Well, thank you. We know you have to run. Feel free. And I also want to express appreciation to all the people who've been part of this call. And we know that many of you wanted to get some questions in. We took more time than we had hoped, but I hope you find that it was worth it. I certainly did. And thank you to all of our questioners for what they did. And I'm Doug Padgett from Vote Common Good. We're going to be working across Texas to help mobilize faith voters into the political system. And so we look forward to staying in touch with you and being part of that work. And this is going to be rebroadcast on social media channels in its entirety. So if you wanted to share it with someone else, there'll be a chance to do that. If you follow Vote Common Good or Faithful America or Pastors for Texas Children, you'll have a chance to share this out. So thank you so very much, y'all. And James, thank you and all the best. And I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of political campaigns and teams, and you've got one of the best I've ever seen. So they're really fantastic. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Thanks.
Blessings, friends.